Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Rise Up, Ignite Your Life, Voices from the Frontline. I'm your host, Krista Fee, and tonight I'm bringing you a very special guest. And I want to say that when I met Billy, it was immediate connection, and you just know your people, and you guys are going to get so much value from just hearing his stories and his wisdom and having the connection, because I know you'll connect with him just as much as I did. So tonight, our guest is Billy Powell. He is a Marine Corps veteran and former task force agent. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hey, Krista, how you doing?
So good. I love that we
Good.
chose the same background. I don't
I
usually
know.
use backgrounds, so my guests are going to think it's a little funny. But as we're preparing for a mission, we have a lot of private personal information we didn't want people to be able to see. So you guys get the funny hands tonight. So so just enjoy that if you are watching and not just listening, because I know Spotify is now visual. So some of our
It is.
Spotify listeners can now watch us as well.
Yep.
So there is so many places that we can go in this conversation. Let's just start at the beginning and tell us about little Billy. Tell us about your childhood a little bit.
Geez. I'm not one of those people who remember being 4 years old and 5 years old. I don't know if something's just wrong with me or what, but yeah, I was born in Long Island, New York. Uh, Family moved around a little bit, ended up in Orlando, Florida, which is where I spent the majority of my childhood and growing up. Um, Pretty, I don't know, I guess pretty normal childhood, pretty uneventful. Yeah, went a little wild allegedly around 16 or so for 15, 16 years old for a little bit. Yeah, then joined the Marine Corps at 20 years old. Spent a few years on active duty with them, and yeah, here I am.
So did joining the Marine Corps have anything to do with the streak of wildness that you had going on?
I don't know, not consciously, right? I don't think there was a conscious connection there. I will say for me, the Marine Corps provided a lot of things that I was lacking in my life at that point. I'm someone who benefited from the structure, just really benefited from everything about the Marine Corps. And if you speak to any Marines, there's parts they love, there's parts they hated, but the impact is pretty profound. And I'm blessed of having been on active duty and to be a Marine today, and it really provided me what I needed to be the man I am today.
Is that Was the military experience something that drove you towards your later career choices, or was that something you always wanted to do?
Uh, Gosh, neither. Um, Neither. I got involved with the police explorers in high school. I want to say like right at the tail end of high school. And for those who don't know what the explorers are, and I know the fire departments have explorers as well. It's kind of like Boy Scouts, but with a cop theme or with a firefighter theme, right? That's where I actually learned how to shoot. Uh, you know, Handguns. Shooting on the pistol team in the explorer unit I was in. And I knew I wanted to do something to help people. I think at the time I was naive and thought, I want to help people in life. So when I was 19, I tried to become a cop. And even though by statute in Florida you can become a law enforcement officer at 19, the reality is you're not competitive. You're not ready, in my opinion. So I went on active duty in the Marine Corps.
Gotcha. So when you got out of the Marine Corps, you finished what you started and joined.
No. What I did was when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went into IT. It kind of framed where I was going in hindsight and where I am today. But I went into IT and started working my way up from help desk positions, all the way up. and didn't go to college until later. I didn't go the traditional route of going to college at 18 years old and all that kind of stuff. But then I reached a point where I didn't really feel fulfilled, like something was lacking. And I thought, and I can say this, I thought, cops aren't very technologically intelligent. Here I am working in IT. I bet I could help out. I know a thing or two about computers. I bet I could help out. And I found an agency, that was sponsoring, which means if they hire you, they pay your way through the academy. You have a job lined up when you're done with the academy and you pass your state tests and everything. And they swear you in and off you go. And that's the route I went. That's how I got into law enforcement.
I love your story a lot because it's a little bit parallel to mine. I never did go law enforcement all the way. I am what we call law enforcement adjacent because I was a civilian participant in a human trafficking and crimes against children task force. So
Right.
I have a criminal justice and forensics degree. So I did kind of similar work in doing the forensics investigative side of the chat, but I didn't have to deal with a lot of photographic analysis, which is what comes later. So I had the experience of hearing what people say and having some photographs sent and requests for photographs and things like that, but I didn't have to experience a lot of the really traumatic things that go along with the true law enforcement side of those investigations. So I can kind of relate to your experiences, but I didn't fully have to participate to that level.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the highs and lows of doing that kind of work. How did the things that you were exposed to and the experiences that you had, how did that affect your life? How did it affect your way of dealing with other people and seeing the world around you?
I mean, one of the ways that it impacted me was, I would say, by surprise and unexpectedly. There were some things, so I started off as, a cop on the street, right? And pretty much, at least that I can recall right now, pretty much everything I encountered, you've been exposed to it either in real life or through media, movies, etc. Um, so there wasn't really much that shocked me about working on the street, right? And I do want to say this: I did have one in particular fantastic instructor in the police academy. I don't know if I could say his name, but he's a previous guest of yours on the podcast, and just amazing guy. And we actually were on some scenes together, after the academy. So he holds a very very dear place in my heart. But so I ended up moving, being assigned to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as a task force agent, which means my agency, still paid me, but I was assigned to FDLE, sworn in, had statewide jurisdiction, and I was on the electronic crimes, electronic and high tech crimes task force. I stumble over that with them, and their most of the vast majority of what I did were crimes against children. Everyone hears the name ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, that sort of thing. And I would say nothing prepared me for that. Absolutely nothing prepared me to see the videos I've seen and see the pictures I've seen, and to be sitting across from another human being uh, who's participated in these crimes or consumed the videos and photos of these crimes. So that I would say it hit me by surprise and unexpectedly. Um, but what happened in my life? I mean, not being prepared for it, I had no idea how to process it, no idea how to make sense of it. Um, I was one of those cops that almost any crime, I can understand how we got there, right? You have no money, you have no food, so you stole something. It's wrong, but I understand how it happened, right? You had too much to drink, you didn't, realize how drunk you were, you got behind the wheel. Wrong, but I understand how we got there. This was something that defied all logic and reasoning for me. How do I even process that? Um, and so, I assumed, looking around at my peer group on the task force, they seem to be handling it well. There must be something wrong with me, right? And what do you do? Do you open your mouth and say something? The reality is, no, you don't, right? Yeah. So it affected me a lot. I started isolating, um, both outside of work and within my peer group at work. Started drinking more than I should probably admit to drinking. Um, and it wasn't to celebrate or anything like that. It was I needed a break from um, memories of what I've seen, memories of sounds I've heard. I might have told you before, I made a rookie mistake of not muting the speakers before viewing some of the material. And some of what I heard is um, eh, it's something you can't unhear and you won't hear in any other setting except for that. Um, yeah, so self-medicated, isolated. Um, yeah,
It's a really interesting point to talk about the different experiences of post-traumatic stress. A lot of people hear that flashbacks or nightmares, and what most people think that is pictures. What most people think that is like a movie playing or something like that. But the experience is very different than that. So for me, it's very like scent oriented. I still to this day, even after working with my traumas severely, still have an issue with pennies. So the smell of copper, which takes me to the place of like the smell of iron and blood, rolling pennies to take to the bank literally is something that I just won't do. I can't do it because it leaves that fragrance on my hands that I just can't tolerate. So when I have talked with people about that as that being a trigger, it's really hard for people to understand that it can be any sensory experience. So uh, it might be sounds, it might be visual, it might be a fragrance that reminds you. A lot of people talk about gunpowder or fireworks, that after
yeah,
effect of the sulfur smell in the air.
yeah,
So being considerate of other people when they say that they're triggered by something, recognizing it's not just a nightmare, it's not just a picture on the back of, in the back of their mind. It's much more present and much more like fully visceral. And it was interesting to hear you say that the sounds being so present. I think that's
yeah,
worthy to note.
yeah. I mean, I can say the when I have nightmares, and it still continues to this day. And I got out of law enforcement in 2015. But when I have nightmares, I can remember them. Um, I know when I've had a night terror because I'll wake up and my hands and forearms are sore because I'm clenched, right? And so when I wake up feeling like I just did some forearm workout or something, I know, I went through something. Sounds are a big thing for me. I could be at Walmart and hear some kid screaming because he's not getting what he wants or whatever the deal is. Um, there's a certain place, there's a certain Starbucks sometimes I'll go to, and I haven't been there in quite a while because in the same parking lot there's one of those dance studios you would take your kids to learn ballet or whatever, and the whole front of it are just floor to ceiling windows, and I can't be there without flipping into that hypervigilant mode and scanning all the vehicles, wondering, is there some dirty motherfucker in some car here? right? That doesn't belong. He's not someone's dad or granddad. It's some piece of shit. And when I go through that, and if someone is next to me when I flip into that mode, they can feel it. I've had them ask me like, "What just happened? Are you okay?" Because they'll feel that change, and for me, it's a whole physiological response, right? I mean, I could feel it in my chest, my breathing. I mean, you name it. It's like I'm in a situation where I have to be hyper vigilant like that. Like there's something very, very bad that's imminent.
Right. It's work mode on. I don't know if that
And
makes sense, but
yeah, and it takes quite a while to come down from that, right? A lot of times the best thing for me is to just physically remove myself from that environment. I need a change of scenery. I need a change of something, you know. I don't know if that makes any sense. I need to detach from where I am, where I'm receiving this stimulus, um, and just come back down. And what I've learned is a lot of self-talk, right? Just like I would tell you or I would tell someone in front of me, like, hey, it's okay. Everything's okay here. Look around. Everyone's fine. Everyone's cool. I would have to tell myself that, you know what, it's okay. It's some kid that didn't get a snack that he wanted. Look, no one's in danger. Acknowledge that, right? And kind of tell myself, okay, you did your job. You did your job. You heard something, you saw something, you checked it out. There's nothing. Now let's move on.
yeah, I love internal family systems for that kind of thing. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, no.
Okay. It's this idea that all of the parts of us, all the different things going on in our brain are different parts of us, and each of those parts plays a role. And it's very important that we accept those parts for who they are and where they are right now. So, for those of us that are having those experiences where there might be, I hate to say this because people, like some people who don't understand it are like, I don't have voices in my head, but we do talk to ourselves all the time. If you say, oh, I want to do this, and the part of you is like, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not what enough. So we all have that inner critic. We all have those voices that are like, oh, yeah, let's do this. Oh, no, we shouldn't do that. So it's not something we're unfamiliar with. But when we say, my fear is a part of me that has a personality and has a role to play and is there to tell me something. And if I befriend it and listen to it and say, hey, I know you're there. I recognize you. What are you trying to tell me? And then the conscious part of ourselves can go, oh, hey, thank you for telling me that. Thank you for, being present with me. We're safe. We're okay. Can you let go? Can you let me
Yeah.
move forward from this and not, let me take control again? Let me be in the
Yeah.
driver's seat again.
Yeah, and you mentioned the voices. I do want to clear this up because I think this is commonly misunderstood. The things that we're talking about are not hallucinations, right? Um, it's really no different than, if you hear a song and that reminds you of high school, or you smell something and it reminds you of someone that you knew, or an ex or whoever. It's that, right? Or if you're driving around and you have a memory, somehow you just spontaneously remember, something you did in the past, or a vacation, and you have that feeling like, yeah, that was a good vacation. That was fun. I remember, you know what, let me call that person. I haven't talked to them in a while. It's things like that. It's not hallucinations are a completely different thing, likely for a completely different podcast.
Right. Right.
Um, and that's not what we're talking about. So if you have someone in your life that maybe you're trying to support, understanding that it's not hallucinations we're talking about. It's a memory that pops up, just like anybody has about anything.
Right. That's an excellent point. And we like to call them experiential imprints because we can have like imprints of all the different senses. So you might only have like a stomach ache. You might only have a somatic response in your body, and the rest of the memory disappeared. So something triggers that somatic physical body memory, but your brain doesn't remember what happened. It only remembers the feeling, the sensation. Or
Right.
there's a scent that's associated with something, and that scent is brought back, and you can actually smell its presence even if it's not there. And the same thing, it can be visual, like a dream, but it's just a
Hmm.
memory. It's an imprint of an experience that is stuck and reactivated by some kind of nervous system arousal, which is your
Yeah.
fight, flight, freeze response. Everybody's heard about that lizard brain that's not that smart and hasn't caught up with with our development. It's just that reactionary part of ourselves instead of the logical thinking, emotionally, relationally mature part of ourselves. So
Right.
it's not the best of us. It's just reactive. So
Right.
sometimes it doesn't logically make sense, but it absolutely is a real experience. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
really good explanation. Yeah, very much appreciate that. So you did the work and you had the experiences. How did you shift from that to, oh, I need help, something has to change, something's got to give? Like, what was your turning point?
Mm. Well, I mean, you know, the way you phrased it, I think, kind of gives the perception that it was a relatively short period, right? I need help. Something has to change. Oh no, no. I lived in it. I lived in the shit for quite a while, like a few years. You know, I tried to power through it. Um, I I believed, from what I heard from, other cops and whatnot, man up, you know. Um, there was one person, that I kind of started dropping hints to, like, hey, I'm starting to really struggle, you know. And in essence, what this person said, among other things, was, "Don't be a bitch,"
Mm.
you know. And so I thought, well, okay, this is just what we do, right? And I was driven by feeling the need to continue to do the work because, okay, I'm struggling. That's obvious. I'm not sleeping. I'm drinking way too much. Friendships, relationship, everything's suffering, right? But there's a kid out there that needs help. And while I can make decisions and defend myself and try to care for myself or self medicate at the time, this child cannot. And who am I? Who am I to walk away from that, right? There's a kid out there. And if anyone has ever worked an ICAT case, I'm not talking about a theoretical kid out there somewhere in concept. There are kids in the community, unfortunately, who need help. You have to intervene to get some of these pieces of shit, because if you don't, they will continue to victimize a kid. And so I tried to just deal with it. And, my journey, as I tried to deal with it, I pretty much accepted the fact that I will do the best I can for as long as I can, get as many of those pieces of shit as I can. And as we used to say, if they don't change how they live their life, we're going to change where they live their life. And so I'll put as many of them away as I can. And when it all gets to be too much, I know how to fix that. And my resolution of fixing that was, I would have to die. I would have to kill myself. So let me go as long as I can, do as much as I can, and then when it's time, I'm out. And it kind of reached a breaking point for me. One of the cases, my last case on the task force, I don't ever speak his name because he's a piece of shit and he doesn't deserve to have his name spoken. But to give a clue into how bad he was and how much of a threat he was, uh, in Florida, he was sentenced to 885 years in prison. Um, and I'm okay with that. I just on a tangent, I've received, some questions here and there, you know, what about the death penalty? Shouldn't someone like that get the death penalty? I'll be judged however I'm going to be judged, but I'll tell you, I take much more satisfaction in the life that he's living now, uh, for the rest of his life, however long or short that may be, than the quick out of a death penalty. Um, so once he was put away and he was sentenced, and he got 66 felony charges, 885 years in prison. Um, I left law enforcement, went into just regular civilian work, still doing computer forensics, still doing cybersecurity, but no longer dealing with that subject matter. Um, Salary went up compared to being a cop, but that was more of a curse than anything else because I could just afford more alcohol, and I could afford to self-medicate even more. So it wasn't, until 2017 where I had decided this was enough and I need some help. And the help was to kill myself. And I wrote some emails to some folks to say goodbye, in a subtle way because I didn't want anyone to intervene, but I wanted to have peace that I, I said what I wanted to say. And someone recognized what I was tiptoeing around and called me up and was like, "Hey, what the fuck? What the fuck? What's going on?" And got into certain meetings and started. I was seeing a counselor, but at that point, that's when I really started to get honest, get open, get willing to work on things, stop the drinking, actually talk about what I feel, what I think, rather than sitting in the shit of what I've seen and what I've heard, right? And rather than sitting in the shit of resentment because these people I was arresting don't fight, so there was no chance to deal with things on the side of the road, as we say. Rather than dwelling in the shit, I was able to pivot, start working on me, start working on the solution, and working on moving forward. And what I found, at least for me, was, you know, if I'm speaking to you and you're not doing well, I would say a lot of helpful, supportive, positive things, but my inner narrative, I'm essentially hitting myself with a bat. And so I started working on showing myself the same compassion and empathy that I would show somebody else, right? Started talking to different folks. And I think you and I, spoke about this, one time before, even listening to people that you've had on your podcast, we can find a lot of differences, right? I was never a Fed. I don't know what they experienced. I was never a firefighter. I don't know what they've experienced. Even this friend of mine who was my instructor in the academy that you've had on, he's had very different experiences than I have. But I could also choose to focus on the similarities. And I can hear the pain, I can hear the hurt, I can hear the confusion. If I say something, I'm going to be ostracized from my law enforcement, firefighter, whatever community, right? And you start hearing those similarities, and I found there's a way to connect with another human being and focus on getting through that rather than sitting in your shit, reliving the war stories of what went wrong and this wasn't fair and that's bullshit. Yeah, it happened. Okay, what are we gonna do now? Kind of thing. So that's where I started my journey of which continues to this day of counseling, working on myself, Um, I had an opportunity to reconnect with, my spiritual and religious beliefs, and found some strength and comfort there, and yeah, just I got up out the bullshit, Krista. Like I quit sitting in it, moaning about how bad it smelled. I got up out of it, right? And I started doing the work.
So all of that time that you were struggling, did you know what was happening? Did you know that it was a reaction to the stress? Did you know that you were drinking too much? Did you know that you were going downhill? Or did it kind of happen and then you caught on after really bad things started to happen?
No, what I thought was there's something wrong with me. I'm not strong enough. I'm not man enough. I would look at my peer group, and they appeared to be doing fine. So there must be something defective with me. I'm just not strong enough. I'm weak. I'm not man enough to do this job. You know what I mean? Um, that's my thought at that time, and I want to be cautious that that's not the message people are hearing today. That's not reality, but that is the thought at the time. That's that narrative, a lot of us tell ourselves. Drinking too much? No, there was no such thing as drinking too much. I mean, when you're in that mode, until something bad happens, like you lose your job or you catch a DUI or something like that, until that happens, you're good, right? I mean, you're there's no such thing as drinking too much, you know? That was my thought. And, I was sober by the time I went on duty again, maybe hungover like hell, maybe feeling like shit, but I was sober. Um, never missed work, never, so in my mind, this is just what you do, right? And, there, keep in mind, I come from that environment of being a Marine where we play hard, right? We play very hard, and that's just what you do. At least at that time in the Marine Corps, that's just what you do. And how many people listening to this podcast are from law enforcement or firefighters or whatever? What do you do when you get together? You're not sipping iced tea.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's just part of life. That's just what it is. So where I knew I was starting to not do well and maybe was being affected, um, was where, uh, what if I know this guy is really bad, but I can't get probable cause to do anything yet. But full damn well he's a bad, bad, bad piece of shit. And I started struggling with this ethical and moral dilemma. Is it worth dealing with him, right? Rather than wait until maybe I can get probable cause and actually, get a search warrant, actually arrest him, and maybe hopefully it's in time, right? And maybe hopefully a kid didn't get victimized. And I started wrestling with that moral and ethical dilemma of maybe I just need to handle this fool. I'm doing the world a favor, right? But then wait a minute, then I'm going to prison. Well, shit, hold on. I can't go to prison as a cop. That's going to be fucked for me. All right, then I got to off myself. And like it all starts unraveling, right? Um, and all that was going on at the time. It wasn't until I left law enforcement and I'm in this regular, normal 9 to 5 job and I'm still affected. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not seeing those videos and pictures anymore. I don't have to go after these guys anymore. This should be gone. Why is this lingering here? I don't understand. Like, am I going insane? Right? And again, that's where, going to counseling and talking about it really fleshed out. I assumed PTSD was only for our veterans coming back. As a lay person, that's what I associated PTSD with, and unfortunately, What did it take for our veterans to get attention and get care? How many had to die, right? How are they treated? How are they viewed? You know? So that was something hard to wrestle with. But that's where I really realized, okay, something's wrong here. I need help. I need to do something.
So let's get a little speculative because it didn't exist and you didn't know. So you can't really say for sure if it would have helped you. But had you been given really thorough understanding of what the effects of stress can be, of what the effects of these experiences can be, and what things to look for, do you think things might have been different at all?
I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I remember having a class, maybe a couple hours or something in the academy talking about that. Um, I didn't take it seriously, right? I didn't care, you know. The the results or the remedy for it, as I recall, had to do with, fitness, go for a run, lift some weights, all this bullshit. The thing was, I was not ever hearing from or speaking with someone like me, right? Um, and so it just wasn't real, right? I would say what might have helped me if I knew what I was getting into before I got into it, that might have swayed my decision to even get involved to begin with. But more importantly, if support systems were in place that made it safe to talk, you know, especially for any folks dealing with ICAT cases, and if they're dealing with the cases, they know what I'm talking about, right? Um, you know, to have them go to once a year, twice a year exams with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, something of that nature, right? Um, I saw, and maybe some of your viewers can identify with this. I heard the gossip about other cops or firefighters who were in crisis at certain points. And I for damn sure wasn't about to put myself out there to be gossiped about, right? I remember seeing someone one day. One day this person is a cop on duty. The next day, this cop is in plain clothes, no badge, no gun, working in like the records section or something crazy. And it's like, what's up with him? What's he doing? Oh, well, he called a suicide hotline and this and that and whatever. And it's like, holy shit. So being treated in a way that takes your identity, it pushes you outside of what you considered family, what you considered your brothers and sisters. um, I wasn't about to go through that, right? And as much as I could point fingers at certain administrators and lay some blame at their feet, I would say we also bear that, right? um, how available are we to each other, right? Had I had someone like that I felt safe to go talk to as a peer, that didn't, they wouldn't feel compelled to do something, but just listen, just hear me out, man, or give me that honest feedback, like, hey, that's your 12th shot. I think you're done, bro. Like, I think you're done, seriously. You know, that would have made a world of difference to me.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for. I think that's why we're doing this podcast, is to try to, you mentioned it earlier, stigma is a really crappy word because it doesn't really encompass what's happening. It's a culture. There's literally a culture of that lacks support for mental wellness. And when we have these conversations about mental illness and post-traumatic stress disorder, and we talk about that like it's a thing that is just the only thing. And we don't talk about the 5 million steps that it takes to get there. And we don't talk about all the simple, easy, real world applicable, like all the little things you can do to not get there. We just skip from healthy to not healthy, and there's no place in between. where people can just be human and have some vulnerabilities and have some struggles and have some challenges and still be completely functional, healthy humans. So if we get outside of the conversation of you're either well or you're not, and actually recognize that everyone who does this job is going to struggle. Everyone who does any one of these jobs and has these experiences and these exposures is going to have to face some trauma reactivity. There's going to be some effects. And if we all deal with those effects, we're going to have happier, healthier, longer, more valuable careers. And that's what administration should want. Administration should want their people to be at their best at all times, right?
Well, administrators are going to talk about, being compassionate and empathetic towards our citizens, treating our citizens with respect, all that other stuff. How much do we treat each other like that? From the administration, from each other as peers, and I'll say a couple of things for a, for people in a profession that see the most egregious of behaviors and conducts and circumstances, right? Um, if that doesn't affect you, I would be more concerned than the fact that it does affect you, right? If you can watch some of these videos and photos and have it not affect you at all, ever, I'm really concerned about you. Like, and I mean this sincerely. Like, what is it about you that is not affected by this? And it could be any of the different things that firefighters, EMTs, cops, veterans have to see. If that doesn't bother you, so I would say this to folks: if you're seeing things or have seen things that do bother you, good. It should, because you're a good human being. That should bother you. Now let's get through that. Okay, we're not going to stay there. Let's get through that, right? And as far as having productive careers and long careers, I'll say this: I give a shit about a career in this field. I care about the human beings, right? If it meant what's best for somebody is to get out of the career, please, right? I would rather see that and run into you alive, happy, doing well, than you stayed in a career and sure you're successful, you got awards and whatever. It's not about the career, folks. It's about the person, the human being. I would much rather sit up all night hearing somebody's bullshit, whether it's a relationship issue, something you've seen or experienced in your past. I'd rather listen to that all night and then say, Krista, look, sun's coming up. We made it. We fucking made it. Right? We made it through the fucking night. We can fucking make it through today. Right? Now let's go out there. Let's live our lives, I'd much rather do that. And I think that's, in my opinion, I'm a nobody, but in my opinion, that's what it's about. It's not about the fucking career. See, listen to my language now. It's not about the career or any of that stuff. It's about the human beings. And by God, if we're going to get out there and show compassion and empathy towards the public that we encounter, which we should, we for damn sure should show that to each other and to ourselves.
Now, if we could just change the conversation to address that, to treat our frontline first responders, no matter what career they're in, as actual human beings instead of automatons, numbers, and disposable.
I was speaking to a friend of mine that you and I both know a couple of weeks ago, and how many cops can identify with this? Someone expresses that they're struggling, and the agency takes their badge and gun away. I don't know the equivalent in the firefighter world. I don't know. They take their badge and hose away. I don't know what they do for firefighters, but as cops, right? They take away their badge and their gun. You're not allowed to be in uniform. You know what I mean? Like, we take their identities away.
Yeah.
That's not compassion. That's not empathy. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place for that. Don't get me wrong. But now you've shamed this person publicly and you've made them feel like So you just look at me as a risk to the organization. You know what? I just needed someone to talk to. I needed to put aside titles and rank insignias. I just needed to talk, whatever that looked like. I just needed to get shit out, man. Or tell you I need a couple of days off. I think I need to go talk to the site. I just need to process. I need to learn how to cope. I need some tools. But we don't do that, do we? We take their identity and we treat them as if they're a threat to the organization, a risk to even have around us.
Yeah, I hear that terminology a lot, that they now become a risk and a liability. And that's really strong words, but they come up regularly. That's what you guys feel. That's how your administration phrases things. So think about those words. Like, one day everything is fine. The next day you say, I'm struggling with this. I'm feeling some kind of way about this call, and I'd like to talk about it. And that's all it takes for your brothers and people you consider family to go, oh, do I trust this person to have my back? Do I trust this person to be able to handle the situations we handle? Now, do we need to go on administrative leave? Do we need to go on desk duty? What do we need to do? Like, now we're going to watch this person like a hawk. Now we're going to notice every little mistake they make. Now we're going to push them out and make them retire because we don't want that risk and that liability. And I hear it over and over and over again. Careers ended with just, okay, whoa, I'm really feeling uncomfortable about this experience I had. And that's something that should be happening, as you say. If we're not bothered by the things we experience, that should be happening once a week. Like, literally, that we can just go, oh, that call was really hard for me. That actually hit home. My kid is 6 years old. I'm not going to get graphic here, but my kid is 6 years old. That reminded me of my child. I'm feeling
Yeah.
something that was really
Well,
scary for me.
and we take care of our own in different ways, right? If you go to someone in your agency, regardless if you're a firefighter or a cop, and you say, hey, I'm kind of out of shape. I want to get in shape. You know, oh man, come with me. Shit. Before you know it, you're running, you're doing CrossFit, you're doing all kinds of, God forbid, you're doing yoga. Whatever. But we will absolutely take people under our wing and say, I'll help you. Yeah, you're out of shape. You're horrible right now, but man, there's hope. I'll work with you. You'll be better, or maybe, you didn't do so well trying to qualify with your sidearm or your agency issued weapon. Someone will take you to the range and work with you until you say, man, I'm having nightmares. I'm kind of struggling with that call we were on the other day. Then it's like, whoa, you're not one of us anymore. Then they push you away. And that's horrible. And that's absolute, that's horrible. And sure, the administration has a lot of work to do in a lot of agencies, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers know that and can identify with that. But I suggest we have some work too,
Yeah.
and that's where, as a peer group, we say, you know what? I don't give a fuck what the chief or the sheriff said. Come here, let's talk. Let's talk.
Yeah.
I'll stay up all night. What's up?
Yeah, one of the moments that's been the most striking for me was way, way, way back. This is before any of the degrees, before any of the trauma knowledge. I worked in an emergency room, and an officer was shot and came in. And I was so impressed with the way the other officers came, like the support and the constant vigilance. And there was no less than 6 to 10 people there at all times, just constantly supporting this person. And I was like, wow, they really have each other's backs. That's family. That's what that means. And then to go back and reflect on that moment and go, but the slightest, I consider trauma a wound. I consider post-traumatic stress to be just healing from the wounds of our experiences. So if we take that context and go, if I'm shot on the job, everybody's like rallied to my bedside, and I'm a hero, and that I couldn't possibly do my job better, and I'm celebrated for my bravery and for the dedication that I had to the job and the things that people say in their cards, and just this passionate outreach to support me. But if I say that I'm mentally wounded, I'm rejected and completely ignored, and I'm no longer a hero, and I'm no longer good at my job, and now I'm a liability, and now I'm a risk, and now I'm dead to the family. And if I commit suicide and my picture and my name doesn't even go on the wall of the office that I gave my life to, they forget about me. And my family feels rejected because I'm no longer, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit that I existed. That's a tragedy.
You know, I challenge how many people in these professions that we're talking about, the first responder professions, care about the human beings around them, not the barbecues, not the birthday parties, the baby showers, all that sort of stuff. Because, you know, what you're describing when they rally, it's it's an external threat, right, that has intervened or crossed paths into this man or woman's life. Someone shot this officer. This external thing intervened in a negative way. We're gonna rally around and protect from this external thing, right? That's great, and you know, I've seen things like that, and that is beautiful. But if I care about this person as a human being, beyond the us versus them mentality of us versus something external from us, but if I care about him or her as a human being, that means I give a shit beyond the barbecues, beyond the drinking nights. And that's when I say, hey, Chris, let me talk to you. You don't seem right. What's going on? Right? There's no big show about it. There's not a crew of us showing up, right? But hey, I'm worried, right? I don't want to be reading about you, you know? I don't want to wear that fucking black band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But how many can say they give a shit about the human being? And I think that's the challenge. And honestly, I ask it, but it's a rhetorical question, right? I don't give a shit. What I care about is, do I care about that human being? Because that's all I can control, right? And if someone else does or doesn't, it doesn't matter to me. Like, do I care about this human being? Am I showing up to care for them the way I would hope someone would show up and care for me because it's the right thing to do? This is an honorable person in my profession as a first responder, right? I'm gonna be there if I care. If I care, I'm gonna be there, and that's what I would challenge people listening to the podcast to really consider. Right? Sure. Well, the administration should do this, and the media should. I don't give a shit. Get down to it. Are you willing to talk to that person? Are you willing to be that safe ear? Or, God forbid, are you willing to be vulnerable and go on a podcast? Are you willing to put yourself out there as our mutual friend does and go speak to different places, be vulnerable, be exposed, because someone might hear that message who needs to hear that day, right then, before they make some stupid choices.
Yeah. So we are at the end of our time today, and I know we could talk all night. So I'm gonna ask, is there anything that you want to say before we sign off for the night that you didn't get an opportunity to say?
Not that I haven't gotten an opportunity to say, but I'm going to reiterate something that I've said before on this podcast. Um, if whether you're a current first responder, former first responder, family member of a first responder, if you're struggling, fuck your agency, fuck your chain of command, find someone you can talk to. And if you don't know someone you can talk to, there's people like Krista, there's people like me. I'd rather sit up all night hearing from a complete stranger than to read about your shit on the news and see other folks out there wearing black bands around their badges, right? Fuck what other people think, because at the end of the day, you are worth it. Period. Not because of what you did or what you might do in your career. Fuck that. You're a human being. You are worth it. Reach out. Get help. It does get better. It takes time, but it does get better. 100%.
Do you want to give people information for how to connect with you?
I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that. I'll feed you some information after this if you
Perfect.
want to post it and make it available.
Will do. All
Yep.
right. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Krista.
And just hang below for a second. All right, everybody. So just to cap off tonight, challenge yourself to look at, honestly, how are you showing up for yourself and how are you showing up for others? It's a great question to ask, whether you're in a first responder role or not. If you're a family member of a first responder, are you showing up for them? Are you showing up for yourself? Are you taking care of making sure that the person that you love knows that you're there to listen and knows that it's okay and it's safe to open up to you? So tonight has been amazing. And I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, AP Laser. And I can't wait to see you guys all next week.